It's testing. Welcome everyone. You can sit in here. I'll freak out probably if there's a big gap there, and so feel free to come in there. I think it'll be better because you'll see the board better. And I won't feel like I'm all alone. It looks better for the people online if there's a heap of people. And that's really mostly what I'm here to do, is to impress everybody. So I've got to make sure I do that part.
Yeah.
Test. I don't even know if this is all working. We'll find out tomorrow, I guess. All right. Somebody's chatting. Don't check. Is there a sound? Can you guys online hear me now? Okay. Can someone give me a thumbs up? You can. Okay, good one. So there is sound. Talking back. All right, I'm going to mute everyone online. I've only done this a couple of times where I'm teaching to there and here, and it's a little awkward, but anyway, we'll get there. All right, so let's start off with a little chill time, and then I'll start talking. I just need a minute to collect myself, so let's just let's just sit up straight, please, and we'll spend a minute cultivating a little presence, and then we'll start chatting about this stuff. So you can have your palms down onto your thighs or your knees is fine. And just gently closing your eyes when you're ready. And just start to watch the flow of your breath in and out of your nostrils. And actually, let's put our left hand on our chest or our heart area and the right hand on the abdomen. And start to breathe into the belly a little bit, please.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, just so that you all know that. This meeting's being recorded. Good. And just begin to now shape your breath, please, into a very smooth, even rhythm. And where the in and the out breath are now the same length or the same count. And sense that your inhale, your in-breath is bringing in the present moment, and your exhale is releasing the previous moment. So both are necessary to cultivate presence. So when we're inhaling the prana or the energy of this very, very moment. And when we exhale, we're releasing anything that's gone by already or anything unnecessary, unuseful to us. And also begin to feel a presence in the belly. Okay, and breathing into the belly is quite centering. It's quite grounding and stabilizing for the nervous system, and also for the mind when you do it long enough. Good, and you can relax your hands down now onto your knees. Just breathe whatever feels natural in your body now. We're going to start chanting Om 3 times together, just 3 even tone Oms. I'll chant a couple of invocations and then we'll come back and chat. Okay, so 3 Oms together. Let's take a breath in. Ganeshagraha Nakshatra Yogini Rashi Rupanim Devim Mantra Mayim Naumi Matrika Pitta Rupanim Om Manubhadraha Kritavo Yanto Vishvato Adbadaso Aparitasa Udbidaha Deva No Yata Midvrade Asana Prayivo Rakshitaro Dive Dive. So calling in all those energies that are auspicious and conducive to our spiritual growth, may they guide, nourish and protect us as we open ourselves to these ancient teachings that brighten the light of self-knowledge. Om Shanti. Okay, when you're ready, just tilt your head forward, lower your chin slightly and slowly open your eyes when you're ready. All right. Well, thanks for being here. Appreciate it. Appreciate you taking the time to come in tonight. So my name's Brad. For those I haven't met, I've met a few of you guys, but there's quite a few I haven't met. So my name's Brad, and I wanted to do a little intro on Ayurveda tonight, just to give an intro to people that haven't really heard much about it. Or for those that have, we'll give a little bit of my perspective on what it is and how we can look at it and how we can use it and how it's so relevant to our lives, especially if you're a yogi, especially if you're a human, but even especially if you're a yogi human. So I'll squeeze as much as I can into an hour. I actually don't have a clock. Do you have a clock somewhere I could get a little bearing? Yeah. Set one up, that'd be awesome, thanks, just so I can know when to stop. Because I could go for weeks talking about this stuff, you know. It's actually more difficult for me to talk about it for an hour than it is for 40 hours in a week. So I'll do my best today, but I'll give a sort of a base idea of what the meaning is. I know we get with yoga as well, we get sort of all sorts of different ideas and different opinions and representations of what these things are. I'll give a broad traditional perspective of what Ayurveda is and how it relates to yoga. And trying to relate it to some of the little branches that come off it as well, so we can get a little bit of a better idea of what the system has to offer. So who's learned a little bit about Ayurveda at this point? Has anyone studied it a little bit? Yeah, you guys? Yeah, a little basic bit, awesome. So I'll just pretend no one's learned anything, so I'll start at the start with the language and all that as well. But well, let's look at, we'll start off looking at the word first. And this is something I've studied for years. I was introduced to Ayurveda nearly 20 years ago now, and it was through yoga, like most of us. It's through yoga, and eventually you do yoga long enough, and somewhere along the path Ayurveda will be introduced, and it has to be. You know, it really has to eventually be, and you'll see why when you study it a little bit more in depth. But I started studying about 20 years ago, and it became quite apparent that this was a real missing link in my lifestyle and my practice. And it was such a missing link in the modern yoga, westernized yoga world, that I had to study it. I had to learn more about it and bring it back into the yogic teachings, because it was missing, and it's such a crucial part of the whole system, which we'll see today, that wasn't being utilized. You know, and it's necessary. It's really kind of essential. If you're going to go far down the path of yoga, it's essential to know some of this. You don't need to be a master of it or study it for years in school like I did, but it's really almost essential, I'd say essential in my eyes now, to know the base principles of it. And I'll give a little bit of a snippet of that today. But the word itself really, says a lot. I don't know how much the guys online will be able to see this, but that's all right. So the word Ayurveda is comprised of two sort of root words in Sanskrit, which says a lot. And Ayur means life or longevity. And Veda means knowledge or wisdom or science. I'll start scribbling just for the sake of time in a minute, but I'll say the word science and then you'll know that's what it says because you won't be able to read it. So the word itself, it's the science or the knowledge and wisdom of life itself and longevity. So how to live a long, prosperous life for a couple of reasons. Two main reasons. One is so we can function optimally as a human, because we all know that already is just a better experience of life, right? When you're not sick or have imbalances and you're healthy and you're vibrant, you have lots of energy, you're stable, your immune strong, your organs and all your systems are functioning, your digestive system, eliminative system, circulatory system. When everything's functioning, you just feel better, right? So that's one aspect of Ayurveda, is just so you have a better experience of life and that your vehicle functions better, functions as it's meant to. And then the second part, which is more of, it's a huge part of what I focus on, is the spiritual aspect of Ayurveda. It's to buy you more quality time in your life so you can realize yourself as a spiritual being. Because when you're distracted by your physical body and ailments and imbalances, it's hard enough just to get out of bed or go do something basic like go make your breakfast, right? Let alone excel and thrive in life and thrive as a parent or whatever you do for your work or your service. It's hard enough to just get out of bed, let alone do that. So that becomes a big distraction. But when we start going for spiritual evolution, which hopefully that's what we're at yoga for eventually, maybe initially we come to get a bit more ripped and a little bit more lines along here that look really cool and all that. There's nothing wrong with that. But eventually, hopefully you want to utilize it for mental health, spiritual evolution. And that's what this is the grounds for, is the system of Ayurveda is to support you and your vehicle in your journey into your spiritual practice and just in your life, just so you enjoy life better. So they're two pretty noble aims already. But there's a couple of ways in which we can look at Ayurveda. And let's have a look at those two ways. And this is how I teach it. I haven't been taught it like this because it all gets grouped together, or people focus more on the medical aspect and some people focus more on the spiritual aspect of Ayurveda. I do both, but it's nice to differentiate it just for languaging too. So there's Ayurveda as what do we call it? As life principles, or the principles of the universe. And I call it the divine code of nature. I think that's a cool name. So Ayurveda being the science of life itself, which is if it's the science of life and everything in it, that's a pretty big science. That covers everything in the world, in our universe. So one way to look at Ayurveda is it's a set of principles that applies to the universe. Talking about the qualities of things, the qualities of the seasons, or the qualities of foods, or the qualities of ourselves, hot, cold, heavy, light, dry, moist, all these different qualities. There's all these principles that Ayurveda maps out that are the principles of the universe. So it's universal common sense. So that's one way of looking at Ayurveda, is a set of these principles, and I'll sort of base them off the 5 elements when we get a little bit later into the talk. So these principles apply to everything in your life. They can apply to what you eat. They can apply to psychology, Ayurvedic psychology, which is basically yoga. So you use the principles and apply it to psychology and communication and relationships. You can apply it to how you set up your lifestyle. So these principles apply to everything. And also what I focus on a lot is how you apply these principles to your yoga practice. How do you make your yoga practice purposeful, and how do you utilize it for specific purposes instead of just sort of folding around and hoping for the best somehow? So hope it's going to work out. And that's what we've been doing for a lot of years. We just flop around and stretch and hope that it's going to work somehow. But there's a really intricate science to it, okay? And that's what it's based off, is the principles of Ayurveda, which are the principles of the universe, they apply to everything. Not just this science, but to everything. And then there's Ayurvedic medicine. And in India, that was their base medicine, has been for thousands of years. You know, and it's a full medical science there. The way we do it in the West, it hasn't quite gotten to the level of, being a fully licensed medical science. It's almost there in the US, you know, and I lived there for nearly 20 years, and they're pushing for it. They're pushing for it to get licensed like Chinese medicine and all that sort of thing. And they're really close. And it's epic. And there is now a doctorate program in it. So it's getting close to being a full-blown medical science. But when I went through my training, the highest level was Ayurvedic practitioner. And it's a little bit different than the full medical science. But this medical science is basically just using the principles of Ayurveda in the universe and the principles of nature and applying it to a medical science. Isn't that a new concept that we could think of now? I mean, it's thousands of years old, Ayurveda, but it's been basing its principles off nature since it began. And now they're just doing all these new studies that are linking all these things that Ayurveda's been talking about for years, you know, linking the stomach to the mind and different sort of plants and other medicines. They're starting to give it credit. But this is two ways in which we can look at Ayurveda. One is a set of principles you can apply to everything in your life, and then one is a medical science where they use these principles to really help people with disease, treat disease, prevent disease, even more so, something I target on. So there's two different ways to look at it. And we'll get into the basic idea of what those principles are based off here in a second. I just think a lot of the time when we learn things these days, we just learn a little bit of, someone will present Ayurveda in a certain way and then we'll see it that that's all it is. Whereas a lot of the world I think Ayurveda is just about food and herbs. A lot of the world thinks Ayurveda is just about spa treatments with oil and massages and things like that. And it's for real, you know, that's what happens. But it's one of the most in-depth holistic systems that we have available to us. So that's a little bit about just sort of the word and what it means and how we can see it from a big picture. Let's now have a bit of a look at what these principles are based off. And who's heard of Samkhya philosophy in here? A couple have. Not so many. I'm not going to do it tonight because it's a whole, you know, it's a 2-hour lecture basically on its own for a short lecture on it. But the basis of philosophy of both the yoga tradition and the Ayurvedic tradition is really based off this philosophical model, and it's one of the oldest ones in the world, called Samkhya philosophy. And what Samkhya tells us is that as human beings, we're made up of a combination of consciousness and spirit, and then matter combined, and that's our experience. Okay, how's that for the Samkhya model in like 1 second? That's basically what it is. So it's consciousness plus matter, and that gave birth to the universe as it is. And that's what we are. We're matter plus subtle energies and a spirit, right? So what that model does is breaks down from basically that concept, and I'll do the very quick version of it today, and it breaks down to all these other aspects of our mind and everything that makes us as we are humans, our mind and our egos and our body and our higher mind and our lower mind and our sensory system. But what it breaks down to eventually in the most grossest level is the 5 great elements that I imagine we've all heard of some version of this. It's ether, air. Let me write it down a bit lower. Ether, air, fire, water, and earth. Everyone's seen that, I imagine, something like it. Ether is space. It's the most subtle element of our universe. It's actually what most of our universe is made of, is space. If you look at a model of the universe, it's mostly just little dots in space, right? Where even littler dots than you see on those pictures. So it's mostly ether. But then the rest of it is made up of these slightly more gross, going down to the most gross elements. And these 5 elements, they say from the, basically all Eastern, the old systems are based off some model that are similar to this 5-element theory. And how they see the universe is everything is made up of these elements. Everything has all 5 elements in it. Even this has water in it. Not much, but there's a little water in there because there's 5 elements in every cell that's in the universe. But we have different combinations of these 5 elements plus a certain consciousness that comes in with it, like a program that comes with the elements that gives it a different shape and texture, all these different things. Because when you think there's only 5 elements that create all of this, there's got to be some other component to it. Well, that's consciousness. And it combines these elements in different ways and forms and creates everything that we experience. So this is the basis of Ayurveda and a lot of Eastern thought and yoga, the 5 elements, and Tantra yoga. Okay? So, but from an Ayurvedic perspective, and this is thousands of years ago where they didn't have microscopes and all of those tools and instruments that we have now. These guys were meditating on it and really looking internally to get the information that they got. And they got the most sophisticated information thousands of years ago, before all of this technology. Technology has nowhere near even caught up to where these guys were back then. It's getting there, but it hasn't caught up yet. So they saw that these 5 elements work together in our bodies and each element has a quality. Like earth is it heavy or light? It's heavy. Is air heavy or light? Is fire hot or cold? Is water hot or cold? On its own, without fire, it's cold. So there's all these sets of qualities that apply to these elements. And then they saw that they operated in pairs, sets of pairs, in the body. And they gave them names. And this is, if you've studied Ayurveda a little bit, you've probably heard of these words, and they're called doshas. Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, depending on who's pronouncing it. And these things they look at as our biological humors, or the things that make up our function of our physical body. And we all have all 5 elements, so we all have all 3 of these doshas in different quantities. And each of these doshas plays a different role in the body that's relative to its elements and their qualities. Okay, I won't draw it, it'll take too long to do it all, so I'll just say it quickly so you get the idea. But air and ether. Air is moving space, it's moving. So air and ether combined create vata. So vata's role in the body physiologically is to move things around. That's its role in the body. It moves everything around. So you can imagine how big a role it has. It moves blood, it moves food down here, it moves food in through there, and then it moves food out there. It moves nerve impulses from your brain to your body, up and down your spine, in and out, your vagus nerve and your digestive system and your heart and everything like that. My arms, my vocal cords moving, everything that's going on now, my eyes looking around the room, all that is driven by this force in the body, vata. So it's a subtle force in the body that moves things around. Okay, so vata's movement. I'll just write a little note under it. Movement. And that helps us function. Without any movement, nothing would happen. We wouldn't be functioning. Okay? And then they saw that fire and water operate together in the body, and it's mostly fire, but it's encased in water because it would burn the body. It would burn the tissues otherwise if it wasn't in water. So fire and water is sort of like acids in the body. Think of digestive fluids that break food down and transform it into energy and tissues, mostly. So they saw fire and water working together, created this thing called pitta, which was related to how the body digests and assimilates things. That's its main role. There's all different parts of the body that needs to... Well, there's 5 main different roles that it plays. Digestion of food, the digestion of thought, the digestion of sunlight, those sorts of things. So its role is assimilation and digestion. Okay. And they saw water and earth work together in the body, and they called it kapha, or kapha. And they saw that it was the fluids, mostly fluid, mostly water, but a little bit of earth, so it sort of had this form to it. But things like the stomach lining, the gut flora, that holds in the acids in the stomach so the acids don't burn your body, because they would burn your body. Hydrochloric acid, if you put it on your skin, will burn you. But it's encased in this kaphic liquid that's in your stomach lining. And you know, if you get a hole in your stomach lining, there's a depleted kapha and you'll get an ulcer or something will burn out the side or something like that will happen. Or you get indigestion and acids come out of where they're encased and go to somewhere they're not meant to go and they burn the inside of you. So that's an imbalance. So that's one place in the stomach. And then there's fluid all around the brain that supports all the brain firing and stuff. That's also part of kapha's role. There's fluid in the joints that stop the bones rubbing together. Bursa sac, synovial fluid, that sort of stuff. So kapha's role in the body is about, it's partially support, but it's also protecting the body from the other elements. We need them, but we need them in specific places. We need fire mostly in the small intestine. So it keeps it in there. So it's protection. And it lubricates things as well. Like even the fluids in your mouth, saliva and that is kapha. It's a form of kapha, and it helps carry food down through the channels. Because imagine a dry piece of toast trying to go down if there's no fluid. Feel like stuck in there, you know. So if you're dehydrated and you don't eat dry toast, you know. So that's what that does. So we all have these, and each of these has 5 sets each that we won't worry about tonight, but they have 5 different. It's all still got to do with movement, but there's 5 different movements. There's 5 different pittas. They've all got to do with digestion and assimilation in the different parts of the body. Same with kapha. I'll go into that a little bit more in depth when we sort of go into the training stuff. So we all have 5 elements. We're all made of these 3 doshas, and these become what they classify our body type as, or what type you are. You know, when everyone learns a little about Ayurveda, they want to know what dosha am I? Okay. So we'll clarify just 2 things here, because there's kind of, this gets misinterpreted, like most things, but this one gets misinterpreted quite a lot. Try and divide all this up. Okay, Prakriti, I don't know if anyone's heard of that. I know a few of you have. And Vikriti, that's not a V, that's okay, Vikriti. Now, so the Ayurveds look at the system. You know, when I do readings and when I'm sort of working with someone, I'll bring you in, we'll do like an hour and a half consultation. I'll ask a whole lot of questions about your life and you and your digestion, your sleep and your relationships and your tendencies and strength and, you know, all of these things. And then do a physical assessment, bone density, eye shape, structure, eye colour, hair colour, all of these structural things, and come up with a reading that describes what model or what doshic constitution you are. And that's the type everyone wants to know. What's my type? I'm mostly Pitta, I'm mostly Kapha, I'm mostly Vata. But we know that we all have all 3, so we're a combination of all 3, but in different percentages. So there's ways, you know, it's something you've got to learn, the qualities of how to read these things in people, but, you know, and then I read pulses and people's tongues and eyes and everything. And then you come up with a reading where mine is around about, I'm around about 70% Pitta. I'm pretty pitted out. I'm probably 25% Kapha, something like that, which leaves what, 5%? Just approximately. Right? We know basic math, like this has to add up to 100 to be the whole me. I've got all 3, so hopefully I've done it right. So that's 100% of me, but on majority I have a lot of the qualities of Pitta. You can see the heat in my system, other physical features of everything's sort of medium lips, medium nose, everything's sort of medium for Pitta people, and it's sort of even left and right side. Whereas Vatas tend to be a little more thinner, have thinner lips, thinner eyes, thinner noses, thinner bridges of noses, thinner fingers, longer fingers, maybe unevenness in the body, uneven teeth, things like that. Certain qualities that these things show up in the body, so you can read them. And then there's certain qualities in like the digestive system that are associated to these as well. So you can read that in people. And so the first thing I look for in a person is to get a reading where I know what vehicle what their constitution is, which we call Prakriti. And that word means the first creation of you. So what model vehicle were you when you came out of the factory? Now that's determined by when you were conceived, not when you were born, but when sperm and egg went and met each other. The whole universe was in a certain constellation. There was a certain season, it was a certain time of day, you're in a certain geographical point on the planet. The planets were here, the stars and moons were that part, so that was your blueprint right at that moment, which determined what your constitution is going to be in this life. And then that is your blueprint through your whole life. That's your ideal, optimal running state. So that's what this measurement is. That's what we want to aim to get to, is your optimal state. Now you might be 50% here, 20% there, and 30% there. It can be any combination. So this is one reading, but that's when you're in your ideal state. Who here feels like they're in their most optimal running state right now? Not even one. You do. Perfect running Prakriti. What makes you think it that?
Everything works well.
Everything's working well? Yeah. You might be close to it. I might assume that you are or you aren't. But this is your ideal state when the conditions are perfect and you've created the perfect food and diet and sleep rhythms and sensory rhythms and all of those things, and then you'll be somewhat close to that. But we have there's also a natural flow. Here's like perfect balance, and there is a natural tide of the dosas. Different times of day, different dosas sort of predominate, and then they recede and come back, and then the next stage of the day, the different dosha comes out and plays a role in that part of the day. Like midday, it's more pitta, is its prime thing. The transitions of the days is more vata, because the movement from day to night, night to day. The more stagnant sort of times of the day, sort of mid-morning, mid-evening, is more of a kaphic energy. So it ebbs and flows, and so does our bodies. So there is this natural flow, and the natural flow is fine. It's just when we start going outside that, or outside that, you do some drugs and it goes out there, or you eat a bunch of fried food and it goes out there. That's when we start having issues, when we're spending a lot of time out of this natural ebbs and flows thing. Okay? So this in here, in these parameters, that would be you and your Prakriti. This sort of stuff, maybe you're just completely missing this altogether and you're just partying out here, is us in this other reading. Oh, I spent years out here. That's what actually got me, that's where I got my desire to be here from. There's enough years in there that made me feel shit enough. It was like, I didn't even know this existed at that point, so I had nothing to compare it to other than things aren't working very optimally right now, including my brain. So that was a good indicator that there's got to be a better way to operate. So that's partially how I got onto this stuff. But so this is our ideal reading, but what affects that? What will tip me out of this ideal state? I always go to this analogy. I haven't found a better one yet so much. But if this is your state when you were put out of the factory, the vehicle factory, and you're this prime Tesla, does anyone know a new model Tesla? Fancy car. Let's all just think the fanciest new model Tesla out there. It's on the showroom floor, it's perfect, it's in perfect tune, tyres are great, the brakes, everything's tuned in, it's got brand new oil, perfectly pure fuel in it, it's dialed, the injectors also, everything's dialed in. So that's in its Prakriti, but then you drive that thing out of the showroom floor and off onto other than the Byron Shire, so off onto the Byron Shire roads that are shit, basically, and then you go to a cheap garage because you want to put cheap fuel in it, so there's crappy fuel that's in it. Maybe you don't put oil, maybe it runs out of oil. I'm just going off old things, or you park it near the beach and it's got salt water over it and you don't wash it for months and then you just leave it in the sun. It's no longer in this little prime conditioned state it was in. It's now in a different state. It's now in this state called Vikruti. So this is first creation. That's your optimal state, showroom floor you. until you walk out into the world. And then, here, I'm going to give you a chance to get a 100% right answer here. What do you think affects this state here? What do you think could affect that optimal state? Environment? Perfect. Alcohol? Food? Is that what I heard? Alcohol? Yep, food. Just anyone say anything and I'll just go, yeah. The way you think? Absolutely. Ego? Ego can affect it, yeah. Relationships, yeah. Just call it anything. Lawnmower, guinea pig. Some will affect you more than others, but absolutely, you could say anything now. What you see on your phone, the temperature, the season, the time of day, the food you eat.
Injury, sickness.
An injury, yeah, all of that. Basically everything in life affects your optimal state. And when we're not aware of what's affecting us, we're quite likely to get tipped out of balance more often, Because the more out of balance we are, and this is the Murphy's Law, I guess, or someone's law, something's law. The more out of balance you are, the more you crave what your primary dosha is, which tips you out of balance even more really quickly. So I'm fire-natured. My ignorant days, everything had to be fire. Smoke cigarettes, drink fiery drinks, listen to fiery, angry music all day, work out in the heat, go surfing in the heat all day. Just everything was a fireball, basically. So that was keeping me out here in this sort of fiery way, sort of up here, burning all the tissues out, creating... I'm lucky I survived pretty well, thank God. But, if I had kept going for much longer... You're pretty resilient in your 20s, we know that, right? But let me tell you that when you get beyond the 30s, the resilience factor is not the same. If you look after yourself, it actually can stay really good for a long time. But if you're just hammering yourself through your 20s, 30s, and in your 40s, I'm invincible, I'm invincible, I'm invincible. 40s, you'll start, the organs start, things accumulate. Life accumulates. And organs will start breaking down. Your mind starts going. When your mind goes, your body breaks down big time, So, so while you can get away with it for a little while, depending on your constitution, I have a constitution that has a good amount of kapha. So it allowed me to abuse myself a bit longer and not die. I was pretty close, but... so I had a pretty hardy constitution, I'm fortunate. If you don't have as hardy a constitution, you won't get away with as much. So it can go either way. Maybe you find out sooner that you can't be out of balance because your body's more sensitive. But anyway, there's just so many different combinations of these things. Some people, and it'll tell you your strengths and weaknesses too. So my strengths are around here. Just natural, when I'm in tune, I have the positive attributes of Pitta. And they're efficient, they're warm, loving, compassionate, passionate. They've got an intelligent factor because it's the fire and the sharp mind and all that thing. So when I'm in balance, those positive qualities come out of me. But when I'm out of balance, you exude the negative qualities of these, which is excessive heat, which is aggressiveness, impatience, critical, judgmental, did I say impatient? Say that 3 times. All these negative qualities show. And same with the other ones, Vatas. When they're in tune and in balance, they're creative, they're bubbly, they're friendly, they're energetic, they're vibrant, they're positive, good communicators. When they're out of balance, they're unreliable, they forget stuff, they're unstable, they're anxious, they're fearful, they babble, they don't stop talking, doesn't make sense what they're saying, repeat things, So they exude the negative qualities. Kapha, positive qualities of earth and water is they're stable and very loving and very loyal and very honest and consistent and grounded. But when they've got too much kapha, they become really attached. They can be stagnant, they can be ignorant, they can be very attached to things and very controlling or very needy actually, very controlling and needing to absorb things in, things like that. So when we're in balance, we exude the positive qualities of each of these doshas and you'll exude more of the ones that you have more of. But still, you can have these and you can cultivate more of these in your personality and whatever. But you'll naturally have those. When you're out of balance, you'll exude whatever dosha is out of balance most. So this is my optimal state, right? So it means I already have a fair bit of heat, so if I go into a hot climate, it tips me out of balance pretty quickly. Or if I eat hot, spicy food, it'll tip me out of balance pretty quickly. But depending on the climate, like today, say you go outside today, even though I'm Pitta dosha, this is my primary dosha, I go out today on a cold day, winter, it's kind of Vatari season right now, early, late fall or late autumn and early winter's Vata season. That's what we're in now, basically. So it's a cold, it's dried up from the summer, it's summer heat and all the trees have leaves have dropped, if you've, not so much around here, but in a place where they do drop. They're sort of going into this death phase where everything sort of dries up and gets ready for renewal, but it's in its dried up, cold state. So if I go outside and it's cold and it's windy and I don't have warm clothes on and I haven't drank any water for 2 days, my Vata is going to go up. So although my ideal state is this, my current state becomes something else. Maybe my Vata goes up to 50%, which will take my Kapha down to 10, and then what's left, 40, and then I'm 40% here. So now this is what I'm operating under, and that's not good for this vehicle. I'm out of tune. That's not my optimal state. So I'm going to be scattered and whatever my version of Vata imbalance is, which usually I just get annoyed when I get out of balance like that. My Pitta gets pissed off at Vata being disorganized. So there's all sorts of expressions of how it works out. But so then what I want to do is figure out what's creating the imbalance. So here's just a prime example of today, and then I'll move on to some other stuff as well. But okay, cold season, cold air, windy, Vata, 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 Vata. How can I use the Ayurvedic principles? I don't need to go and see an Ayurvedic doctor to give me medicine right now. Okay? I can go, all right, so it's cold. Let's put a jacket on to break the wind up. Let's put a beanie on and or go inside and get out of the wind. That'll bring me back to closer to balance straight away. Drink a warm cup of soup or something like that. Put some warm oil on your body. That's using the principles of Ayurveda to keep me closer to this balance. You don't need to go and take medicine. You just use the principles of nature, put a warm jacket on, or go inside, turn the heater on. That can be Ayurvedic right there. You're using the opposing qualities. What's the opposing to cold? Cold and dry. What are the opposing qualities? Warm and damp and wet, yeah. So bring things that may be food. Go inside and have a big, warm veggie soup and heat up. Or the vice versa. If it's summer and I'm in the heat, I just keep going inside a lot, don't I? But depends on, you kind of have to sometimes, get out of the heat, get out of the sunlight, go turn the AC on, or get a nice cool towel and put it over your neck. Put a hat on if you're in the sun. Those sorts of things. Can be have a cool drink, eat some cooling foods, that sort of thing. So there's how you can use the principles of Ayurveda in your everyday life to keep you more in this natural ebb and flow of your doshas here. And don't let it get too far out there. Does that make sense? It sounds so simple when you hear it, like it's such common sense really, but we really forget it a lot of the time. Or we never learn it, so we don't even know that it exists. So that's sort of, in a nutshell, the goal of Ayurveda is to bring you to this optimal state. For one reason, just to experience your vehicle running in its optimal state. And two, so you can get on and grow as a spiritual being. And, we're talking about evolution of your soul now. We're talking about many lifetimes, not just this one. But you can grow in this one. Whatever you subscribe to, you might not believe in multiple life cycles. These systems do. That's what they operate on. So that's the basis of it. Now the rest of it is understanding in depth how these qualities and how these doshas manifest in your body. And how do you know Okay, we're hanging out in there. You don't really feel too many symptoms going on. When you're just in the natural ebbs and flows, pitta heats up a bit at the midday, and if you just stay mellow, you find it comes back down in the mid-afternoon, and then it flows. You don't really feel too many symptoms. But how do you know when something gets out there?
By your moods.
By your
Moods.
moods could be one way, for sure. Your emotions could be a sign of an imbalance.
What are you craving? Craving. What are you eating?
What are you craving? What are you eating? Yeah. Your body tells you. Your body tells you what's going on if you know how to read it and if you're in tune with it. If your gut is churning, and I mean like not churning because it's hungry, it's burning because maybe you had 2 or 3. I'm going off something I do because I don't drink wine very often, but now and it's so lame. I have 1 glass of wine and I'll wake up at like midnight with my gut just pissed off at me. Just like, you shouldn't have drank that wine. So I don't drink it now. It's just it doesn't feel good. It's so acidic and it's really not good for pitta people. My body does okay with beer, so I have a beer occasionally. You know, I don't have 10. I have 1. It's not the old days. But your body will tell you there's coatings on your tongues. Maybe you'll get. Another thing that happens to me when I'm in the heat is I get red rashes around here, or extreme weather changes. Yeah, around sort of these areas. And these are different organs. You know, there's the liver and kidneys and all these different things that go on your face. So it comes out in different people. Vata people will get really dry skin or systemic dryness, constipated, that sort of thing. So that tells me I'm out of balance here. And the type of symptom will tell you it'll tell you a lot about, but it's not always as straightforward, but it'll tell you what dosha is out of balance. Okay, so constipation, I know, dryness is from excessive vata. Vata people have a lot of constipation. They're just dry, their systems dry out and they can't move waste through them. And they have very variable digestive systems and things like that. So, funny enough, looking at your poo can tell you a lot about your symptoms. And Ayurvedics look at poo a lot. We look at poo a lot. Because the quality and the shape of it and the texture of it will tell you what's happening in your digestive system. And everything off your body actually stems off this tube in this digestive system. This is important. Your gut, your small intestine, and your large intestine is kind of this central tube that is this central hub of your whole system. So the quality of your digestive power or fire and the quality of your eliminative system is really the basis of good physical health. You might eat good food, but if your digestive system's crap, then it's not going to do any good, how good the food is. So that's a really important part of Ayurveda's digestive system. But, you know, so what if you've got really loose stool, loose poo? Pitta, excess heat pushes the waste out quicker, and it's trying to get the body rid of heat, so it'll just push the waste out quicker. That means more than likely have a pitta imbalance. Kaphic imbalance could be really, they have sluggish digestion, so they can be really just sluggish energy, inability to be, no motivation, that sort of thing can be a kapha imbalance. Excuse me. So it's a matter then of just studying how these doshas operate, what are the symptoms and signs of my body going out of balance. And then you can start just watching yourself, the parameters of your health in here instead of out here. And let's get colourful now. This is starting to be the red zone when you hang out there, you know, either side. If you hang out, if I had a blue pen, I'd do the nice blue zone up the middle here, or the green zone. So that's when when you study Ayurveda, you study these qualities, how they work and manifest in the body, how the seasons each affect them. Each season has doshic qualities. You know, summer's pitta, that's pretty obvious. I said before, the sort of transitioning seasons are more vata. And then they're like spring is more kapha, and spring and sort of late winter, spring is kapha. And then the times of day, pitta's the midday, turns of the day are vata, and the other portion is kapha. So you study all these cycles, for one thing, and then different ages. 0 to 18 is the kapha phase of your life. No matter about your constitution, everyone will have a little more kapha in their system. 18 to 60 is your pitta time. That's your sort of fiery, do your life, go out and excel and do everything, the power force of fire. And then Vata's the end of the life. It's where you sort of start to, life, the physical reality of life dissipates and you go more into, hopefully you go more into a spiritual reality, or you just get more anxious and fearful. Depends if you're in tune or out of tune. So this is how you can age gracefully too, through Ayurveda. So instead of it going old age is, it's dry and anxious, it's like, I can actually tap into my wisdom here and really get into spiritual practice. Because that's how it was initially, and then share the wisdom to the youngers and help them grow in their lives. That's the cycle how Ayurveda sees it, you know. You're just figuring shit out when you're a kapha, little kid, you're just growing, you grow up, so you need more kapha to build your body. And then you get to your full size where you're going to do your purpose in life, and that's your pitta phase where you go out and relationship and work and do your service to the world and screw some stuff up and figure it out hopefully, and get some years where you're operating optimally would be ideal. And that's where this system combined with yoga excels like no other, because it just explains things so incredibly cohesively would be the word. So integrated. It's like it's not just a theory, it's like it's really something you can integrate and feel the effects of it. So that's the basis of it. So here's some of the basic laws of, you know, quite a lot of Eastern holistic systems. Is like increases like. I mean, this is so simple, really. And opposites balance. Basically, I mean, it gets a little complicated. I won't say the whole system. It can get pretty complicated, you know. I mean, you get combinations of issues going on and long-standing issues and combined with new things, and it gets complicated. But the basic idea of it is like increases like. So if I'm overheating, don't give me more fire. Give me the opposite, something cool, and it will balance me back to this nice parameter that I'm going to stay healthy in. Your body can ebb and flow a little bit and it will stay healthy. If it starts going outside that, and you do that long enough and consistently enough, disease will form. Without doubt, it will form in one way or another and your system will break down somewhere. Maybe repairable, may not be. The best way is to not let it get there. It's better to prevent imbalance and disease as best you can than cure it, you know. Modern medicine's a bit more geared at like, we'll wait till you're really messed up and then come see us and then we'll see what we can do. And you got about, if you're very lucky, you got about a 50% chance of it kind of helping a little bit. So prevention is much better than cure, and that's also a part of what Ayurveda focuses on. And this is why I like to educate about it so much, because if you can sort of live in these parameters and prevent yourself from getting out of balance too much, you've got a way better chance of getting through life without getting too sick. It doesn't guarantee it, because karma is on top of that, and that can be past lives coming through, and then you get spiritual enough to accept that and deal with that in another way. But you give it your best chance. Like increases like, opposites balance. And then I like to write the formula. How do you know if something's Ayurvedic? How do you know if it's an Ayurvedic thing? I explain it as a formula. It's about knowing the nature of your client or the person. Let's just call it nature of the patient. I don't know what that is. Then you know the nature of the disease or the imbalance. And then you know what? What's the last thing? If you know the nature of the person you're working with, then you know the nature of their vikruti or their illness or their imbalance or their disease or whatever it is. Then all you need to know is, well, what's the nature of a remedy? And you apply this formula and you can call it Ayurvedic. If you're applying that formula to bring something back to balance, whether it's I keep talking about guinea pigs these days because guinea pigs are such a big part of my life now. My daughters, we bought her 2 guinea pigs a little while back. She's 5, my daughter. And now it's just like I'm in guinea pig land. So guinea pigs come up quite a lot. I don't know how that relates to this, but nevertheless, know the nature of the patient, know the nature of the illness, and you know the nature of a remedy, and you apply this remedy to balance it. That's using the principles of Ayurveda to heal and to help people. So either stay in balance or come back into balance. And then it's just a matter of knowing the nature of things. So then the study part is you study the nature of nature. It's a good something for something. The nature of nature. Maybe that's the name of my next workshop. You study the nature of different foods. Different foods have different qualities. Some foods are heating. Some foods are cooling. Some foods will build tissue. Some foods will diminish tissue to some degree. Same with herbs. Does this make sense, this part too? Yeah. So now here's another cool thing, because I think it's all pretty cool. So what's the remedy going to be? Does the remedy have to be a complicated herbal formula or a 6-month, panchakarma thing? Or could a remedy be, what could a remedy be in using the principles of Ayurveda that we've already talked about tonight? Huh?
Prevention.
Prevention's a great way to go. Yeah, preventing things. But say I'm already out of balance. Say I'm overheated. There's a lot of, I could eat cooling foods, have a cooling drink, go into a cooling room, maybe I've got a ski suit on in the middle of summer, just take the ski suit, take some clothes, cool down, go into the breeze. I can do a cooling yoga practice. So the remedy can be a lot of different things, and that's what we use, and that's what I use in Ayurveda. The remedy is not just food and herbs. The remedy could be go for a walk around the park, get into nature, get into a relationship. It could be get out of a relationship. There's just anything can be a remedy if you're applying the principles. But what I also specialize in these trainings, and this is the training we're sort of that we've got coming up here in a month's time, where we spend 5 days going into the depth of this. It's about the integration of these principles. It's a fair bit into your lifestyle, so we go into a fair bit into lifestyles, a bit into food, but we pour a lot of it into applying the principles towards your yoga practice. So then there becomes practices for the doshas, So let's just say Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. Now, when we talk about imbalances, and I'll just do this last little quick bit because and how it just goes like, when you start talking about this stuff, it's just like a snippet. When we say we have a Vata imbalance, it means we just talk about an imbalance being too much of that dosha. That's just the language in Ayurveda, so we understand that. When we have a Vata imbalance, it means there's too much Vata, so we have too much of these qualities, too much light, dry, cold qualities. So, for example, a yoga practice, and if you know the science of the poses and breathing and bandhas and all the science behind Hatha Yoga, which is postures, bandhas, breathing exercises, meditation kriyas, all of these things also have qualities. Okay, so and I go in pose categories is how we look at it in the traditional context. What do we got? Forward bends, I'll just abbreviate. Forward bends, back bends, laterals, what about forward, back, lateral, twists, and inversions and extensions. And look, let's just keep it simple tonight. We'll just say, because inversions is a bit of a can of worms, and extensions, not much is happening. A bit's happening, but not much. These are the 4 main categories of spinal movements, and we're mostly looking at the spine, the central nervous system, combined with the organs and the marma points, because all the crucial ones are sort of from here to here. And that's what we're not really worried about the hip just for the sake of opening the hip to stretch it out. It's like folding forward. It's not to lengthen your hamstrings, it's to compress your pelvis and move one of the Vata forces down and out to help the force of elimination or grounding or letting go, because they're all related to this down-out force of Vata. Remember I said Vata had 5 different subcategories? This is one of them, and it's got to do with the elimination, grounding, down moving thing. Guess what? Forward bends are the best poses to do that. You compress the pelvis. There's also other things happening in the nervous system that push the energy down and out. And let's do forward bends with long exhales. Even more grounding and stabilizing.
Moon practice?
It's based on a moon practice, yeah. based on a moon practice. It's a moon, the moon, sun, fire, all these models are saying the same thing about energetics. They're just different names for it, basically. I'll go into that in the first training as well, because there's Brahmana, Langana, Sama. That's just another word for doing these. It's moon, sun, fire. That's just another word for these primary things. It's either it's active, it's inert, or it's a balancing thing. So that's how we break down these two. So forward bends are probably the best to alleviate Vata, combined with twists, because twists are very centering. So you do a forward bend twist practice, that's going to really pacify Vata dosha. Let's look at on the opposite end, because that's too light, too much mobility and too much stimulation and energy. Let's think of the opposite end of the spectrum here with the kapha imbalance. Stagnant energy, damp, and I don't mean low energy, you're exhausted, I mean just dense, low pranic movement in your system. Not depleted energy, that's more of a Vata thing. That's a sort of a big difference you need to determine if you're working with people. If they're low on energy, you've got to figure out whether they're depleted or they're just congested and sluggish. So let's just say they're kaphic and sluggish. You would want to give them, then this is just generalizing, but you would generally want to give them an uplifting practice. So basically the opposite to forward bends, back bends. You could do more dynamic movements. You could emphasize inhalation. Yeah, did you say? Someone say that now? Yeah, laterals work well. Heat it up, speed it up, energize it. Inversions work really well for kapha. What's that? Fire practice? No. It's a bit of a can of worms, fire, because I think people relate fire to solar, because solar and fire are very different practices. Fire's more about refinement, solar's more kapha. Yeah, fire's refinement. It's a different thing. It's another conversation for another time. We'll do it though. Yeah, more heating and more activating. The opposite qualities to kapha, which is cold, heavy, slow, dense. It's mud. And water and earth, it's mud. So you want a propelling force, which is solar energy, sun energy, vibrant, uplifting, energizing movement. So a big blowout backbend practice would be good for them. Because generally their bodies are strong and can handle that sort of energy as well.
Like sun salutation is
Sure.
perfect.
Great, yeah, just the modern sort of vinyasa blowout class would actually work okay for a kapha. It's still better to do it scientifically and do it systematically using vinyasa krama, but just any stimulating movement is probably going to help a kapha to some degree, yeah. I'm oversimple, I'm doing 6 months of training in half an hour here, so there's a lot more to it, but these are the general ideas of how you can use these principles towards the science of Hatha Yoga and make it proper yoga therapy, not just yoga therapy that like, I'm just going to relieve your shoulder injury. I mean, that's okay. I don't want to sound too critical against that, but real yoga therapy is how can I change the energy in your body? How can I tap into your mental capacity? How can I stabilize your mind and ground you out and build your resilience? Not how can I touch my toes and get my leg around my head, because that doesn't matter really at all. So this is, if you want to learn how to be really purposeful with the yoga practice, these principles are essential. You can just stab in the dark, but it's not really doing anything. You know, how many Vata people, this is the thing. What do Vatas need? Forward bend, grounding, stabilizing, restorative practices. What classes are they going to? Ashtanga, Power Vinyasa. Kathas, what do they need? Power Vinyasa, Ashtanga. Where are they? At home on the couch. Or yin. Or yin. If they make it to yin, they're going to yin or something. I mean, it's changing a little bit, and I'm just generalizing, kind of making a joke out of it. But there's some truth to it. Pitters are all in the hot yoga classes. Freaking out. Freaking out. They come home and they're pissed from yoga. It's awesome. Like, seriously, this is what's happening, you know. It's getting better, but it's not getting that much better. The more of us that study this stuff and teach it and apply these principles, the better it's going to be for everyone. You know, the more you can help people, really. And the more we actually start to, because, you know, the yoga tradition, oh boy, it's been reduced to, it's been whittled down to like an exercise program. And it's not even that good an exercise program. There's so much better ways to get exercise, you know, seriously. Go surfing, get on your bike. It's way better. Go and do some HIIT training or some fight training or whatever. I don't know. It's better to use this for really specific purposes. I think I'm just sort of coming from my perspective. It doesn't mean you can't do it for fun. You can do whatever you want. But if you want to, you can use this exceptionally purposefully to really help heal people. From whatever level, you can just help balance their Vata dosha, or you can take them all the way to how to embrace the depths of their soul and shine as a human being. That's sort of the highest in levels when you get to balancing their body in that first. But if you're going into these, if we start doing these heightened practices of pranayama and hatha yoga, when you learn the powerful techniques and kriyas and mantras and all these fancy things that everyone wants to jump right to it, and your body's not set up and balanced and prepared for it, guess what's going to happen? It's like your wheel's about to come off and then you just floor it and hit the accelerator. You know? It'll just speed up your momentum into hitting the wall. You've got that last little bit of adrenaline left in your body, last little bit of immunity juice left in your body, and you go and squeeze it out in a backbend, blow out backbend practice just so you feel good for a couple of seconds, and then later on you're like depressed at home, like, blah, you know, and you do that day after day, and people are doing it. It's hurting them, you know. So this is when you can use this knowledge to really excel at being a teacher or just being a practitioner, you know, or use it in your life. You don't even have to do yoga. You can just, I'm assuming most of us are yogas in here. That's why I'm sort of pushing the yoga end of it. But just in your relationships, understanding how people communicate and when they're out of balance. You can give if your boyfriend or your girlfriend, there's not too many guys in here, but boyfriend, girlfriend, however it goes, have some snack bars on hand at every moment of the day to calm the pitta down. Because if they get hungry, they're going to get angry. So it's very Ayurvedic for you to just have a snack bar in your purse. You know, no, it's true though. And it can help keep me balanced. You know, little tricks like that. So that's what we go into depth in this training. I'm going to push this training a little bit. Where is it? Up there? Is that it on the wall? So we do 5 days. I've actually got 2 of these. We're doing the first level one in next month. I think, what are the dates? I'm not that prepared for it, am I? 14th to the 18th of July, Wednesday through to Sunday. We're doing it live in here, which is super cool. I did my first live 5-day training a few weeks ago in Sydney. It was the first one I've done in over a year. And it was cool. It was cool to be hanging out in a group again. You know, you're chanting and people are omming, because online I'm just omming and there's no one, I can't hear anything. It's not like this cool room full of bombs. So we're doing it there, but we are also doing it on Zoom. We just sort of chatted about that today, and we're like, if you can't make it in here, we are going to make it available on Zoom. You can do it live on Zoom, or you'll have the recordings for 6 weeks after the training as well. So we'll make that available to everyone that does the training as a little bit of a bonus. So check that out. It's on the Ritual site. It's on my site, bradhay.com. Check a bit out more. We have 5 days to go into this in depth. It's cool to spend 5 days going into this and breaking down Sankhya philosophy and going into the, you know, just a lot of it more. You just get so much more time. And we practice every day, and we do yoga nidras most afternoons. And then we do a level 2 in November, thanks. And the level 2 we extend on it, because usually you do level 1 and you go out into the world, and this is what I've experienced over the last, I've been teaching it for I don't know how many years, level 1, maybe 7 or 8 years. And there's a whole bunch more questions that come up after you learn the base principles and go and start using it. So I designed a level 2 training to cater for that. Let's expand upon it now, and we'll go into a little bit more depth and recap stuff and learn some new things. And so that's in November as well. So we'll do the same thing here or online, I think, still. It's still early bird for another few days, which saves you a couple $100, I think. I should have all these details, I'm sorry. You can look them up on the site. But it's still early bird for another 3 days, I think, isn't it? Or 2 days. So jump on it if you're thinking about it.
It's till the 16th of June.
Oh, cool. So another almost 6 days, yeah. Awesome. Any questions? Any questions on any of this that we've done today? General? Yeah.
How do we get a reading of which one when we're off and where our constitution is?
I'll tell you how not to, and then I'll tell you how to. So don't go online and do the self-diagnostics ones.
Yeah, so
if you do, just do them and just burn it and forget about it. Because usually people get confused and they get a reading of their imbalance and then they go to the program for the imbalance, but it's actually the wrong thing, the complete wrong thing for their... So you have to see a qualified practitioner. There's there's charlatans in every system, and just make sure you've got someone that's formally trained. There's not that many around. I do consultations. I work with people individually as well. I don't have a lot of time for it these days, but if there's students that have done my trainings and so forth, I will make time. It's just easier for the language. It's just too much for me to try and... I did that for years, and it's just not my aim anymore. I really want people that are dedicated to the system, and I can talk the language and I can refer to this, so I don't have to spend half of the session explaining what a dosha is. I can just say, remember that? Well, this is what we're talking about. It's just more efficient. And I know people are a bit more dedicated that way, so I make it work. So you can get in touch with me on my site, bradhay.com, and I can give you a reading of that. Yeah.
I don't know if I just heard like from people who were interested talking about it, like, is it like that your body has a physical dosha, but that could be different to your personality or your mind? Like, might be more dominant in, I don't know, just say like your mind is like vata, but your body is like pitta and kapha. Like, is that...
The imbalances are more that way inclined. Your constitution, the mental constitution and the physical constitution are pretty well matched. It's not always just in the columns, but you can have a completely varted out mind and have a kapha imbalance in your body. Yeah, absolutely. The imbalances can show up in any way.
So the constitution is meant to be the same everywhere?
It's meant to align with your guna, your dominant guna, which is your mental constitution as well. To a certain degree. There's all these variables, but to a good degree it's meant to be somewhat matched, yeah. Yeah.
But you do have like this, because you almost have like, this is a question or a statement, sometimes like the percentages that are quite close together and therefore can become confusing.
Oh yeah.
Both are happening at once, like mentally and physically.
Yeah, if someone has like 30% vata and 30% pitta and maybe just 33% of all three, you're not sure how those qualities, whether they're going to come out more physically or more mentally. My wife's a great example. She's thin and thin-lipped. She's got a lot of sort of vatary features. But she's got quite a kaphic digestion system and a very sweet, stable, consistent mannerism. So that's the kapha coming through in a very nurturing quality, and that's the kapha coming through. But just if I was to just base it off her face and her maybe body type, without knowing more in depth what I know, then I could just assume and say vata. But then she's a very consistent. She's got this quality of kapha in there. So it's not as straightforward all the time. There's so many ways in which these things can come in and present through the system, and some will be present in body features or they'll present more in the personality. So that's why I do a comprehensive reading, and it's like, okay, well, I know some of the doshas are showing up in the physical body, but the other parts I don't see in the physical body, I read in the pulse, and I know it in their voice, and I know it in their demeanour, and I know it in the choice of words, and there's other subtle ways in which to read it. So it's we look at it in simplistic terms because I've only been talking about it for an hour, and it's a 6,000-year-old, the most sophisticated system on the planet. So I can't get into the real details of it all. But it can be simple and it can be really complicated. It can be really obvious and they're all vata and they're vata's body and vata mind, or there can be all sorts of combos. Just think a combination of consciousness and matter. No pair of beings has ever been the same. Think of how many beings, and I'm not just talking about humans. I mean, there's been billions and billions and billions and billions of humans that have come through. None of them have ever been the same because no one's ever been born at exactly the same time, in exactly the same place, with exactly the same parents, in exactly the same season, in exactly the same geographic location, with exactly the same planetary thing, ever, including animals and grains of sand and trees and blades of grass. It's pretty miraculous. It's pretty wild. I mean, it can be really simple on one hand, and it's like, this is the most complex system known to us. Yeah, it's pretty incredible. It's pretty incredible.
So, like, because you said conception, so, oh, sorry. Okay, so can, like, even you could even have your doshas out of balance from birth if the mother is not in balance.
People are born addicts. Yeah. People are born addicted to heroin, you know. So it's greatly determined by the parents and their imbalance. your constitution coming through at conception might have been one thing, but if mum specifically was doing a lot of drugs when the baby was forming, then that's going to come through. Yeah, the vikruti will then, it's very sad, and that's part of the karmic sort of cycle of each being. But yes, that can have an effect for sure. Yeah, that's a big effect, really. You know, when you see kids come.
Would you say intergenerationally, like?
Yeah, it crosses over.
Even just our DNA, like.
Just genetics. Yeah, there's imbalance that comes through genetics in that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to talk about with it. So much. It's incredible. It's wild. So here's a book. This is actually the book for the training anyway, as well. It's the required reading for that if you're going for certification. I would say if you're into a read that's combining Tantric Hatha Yoga and Ayurveda and traditional yoga, this is one just to have in your library. This is, I bought my nice copy and the other one's mashed, but.
Is the reading like necessary before? Or
No, just you do a book report after the training, and you can read it before, but you don't need to. You have a manual. This is the manual for the first level, so it's like a 100-page manual. That's with the first one, so that's got a lot of everything we go over in it. Second manual's almost about the same, and then there's another book for the second one as well that you buy and read. It's just different, more. I mean, there's only so much I can put into manuals. If it was everything I was talking about in the training, it'd be a fat book. So we just put the highlights and the things, and then you take notes. And yeah, it's a really, you know, it's kind of become my signature training over the years, this one. There's 6 or 7 other 5-day trainings that hone in on different aspects, but this is the one I want. I'm almost at the point of making it a prerequisite to do any of the other trainings, because it is such the foundational teachings of everything that we learn in the yoga tradition. You know, the principles of nature. It applies to everything. It's just like, that'd be the one to do first, this one, the first one coming up. Yeah. So let us know if you want to join us for that. I'd love to have you. I haven't even looked online. What is the book? Sorry guys, I've been neglecting you online. The book is called Yoga and Ayurveda by David Frawley. I'm holding it up there, but the camera's over there. So, if you like having 2 wives, which I would never even attempt, I wouldn't even attempt it for many reasons. So Yoga and Ayurveda by David Frawley. Yeah, just punch in David Frawley, Yoga and Ayurveda, and that book will come up. It's an awesome read. I didn't even see who's on here. Awesome, guys. Anything else we need to talk about, say? Brad Hay, Inner Revolution. I'm actually going on Instagram all these days, so you can check that out. Inner Revolution is actually, I rebranded this year, and that's been my new brand, because I had studios in the States, and I just had to rebrand as myself again. So that's my handle on there. That's, I post about everything on there, so if you want to connect on there. Let us know, send an email through the site. Also, you can sign up on the site. On the homepage, there's a little thing that pops up. You can sign in, and we send you out a bunch of, not a bunch, but upcoming events and things like that. Yeah. Awesome. Thanks so much, guys. See you soon. Thanks to you guys too. I'm looking there, but the camera's there. Thanks, onliners. Who's on here? I'm going to try and have a look now. Give you a bit of love now at the end of it. Beatrice is on here. Deb, Gabby, Jean. Thanks for joining, guys. I know I'm looking at the computer, but we'll post these. I'm going to post this on Instagram as well, this hour and a half or something. So awesome. Hi, Jeb. Beatrice is here. Haven't seen you for a little while. A few days. Awesome. I'm looking up there, I know. Hang on, look, I'll do this. Oh, that's not it. If I do that, now I'm here. All right, there we are now. All right, I'm going to wrap it up. But thank you guys for joining us on here too. Super pleased. Hit us up. Yeah, we are doing this training online as well. So if you want to do it with us on Zoom, it's going to be live on Zoom as well as kind of in this format. Awesome. All right. Thanks, guys.